So, did Charlie send you that picture of his ingrown hair he had?
Why was it shaped like Sonic?
Well, that's the thing. I think he was trying to manscape. It's not actually Sonic. It's Crystal from Sonic. But
Oh, for a second I thought it might be like Knuckles or something, but it turned out it was on his waist.
yeah, I mean, there's some Knuckles in there, but that's different.
Jesus Christ. Now I regret that. Oh shit, we're live.
Oh shit. Hello everyone.
I'm not proud of what we just did.
No, me neither. Did you get a haircut?
I did get a haircut an hour ago. I
Looks fresh.
regret it because I normally do the sides first and then I do the top because I can adjust the top to whatever I need. But this time I was dumb and just went straight for buzz on the top and had to scramble to make it not look like complete shit. But
So wait, you got your haircut, then you cut your hair additionally afterwards?
No, I always cut my hair, but I just cut it in the wrong order.
Oh, okay.
So it makes more sense to do the sides to whatever length you want that, and then kind of trim down the top until it matches. But
guys' haircuts are so easy. Just shave the sides and then fade it if you want, and then do whatever length you want for the top.
Like Dana was asking me to cut her hair, and I was like,
no,
you don't want that.
I've got to look at you.
It would have gone really poorly. She's like, oh no, it'll be simple. You just have to sort of trim the back. Like, no, you won't. I can make you look like me. That's all I can promise.
Or Star Wars Explained.
I can. I'm not buff enough for that though. So
yeah, he's getting yoked. Good for him.
Once I have my office, maybe I'll just have to get like a weight set or
I didn't notice
elliptical
until
machine
I saw
or something.
We should start our podcast.
That's probably true. Okay, need to have a clear conscience, everyone. Palpatine? Special guest Palpatine on today's episode. Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Tapcaf Transmissions, the only Star Wars podcast available to anyone, ever.
Emperor's Black Bones.
That gets said a lot in this book. It also gets said a lot
my
in
intro last
NJO.
time, so
well,
I felt like
I said something that actually made sense during the intro, but you can't really throw me off here. So today we're going to be talking about ISARD'S Revenge, which is the second last X-Wing book. We covered kind of the main series before, and we thought this would be a good time to get back in.
Isn't it the third last? We have Starfighters.
Oh, Adamar. Right. I always forget about Adamar. So we got Starfighters and Adamar left, as well as Mercy Kill.
Mercy Kill, yeah.
Mandatory Kill?
I was going to say Mandatory Retirement, but that's the comic, isn't it? Mercy Kill, yeah.
So, yeah, we still got a little bit of X-Wing left, but we like to sprinkle them in between other things.
They're so fun. I love this. I love reading these books. I wish that they had just like went fully serialized and made like 30 of these. Because they're so readable and they're so fun.
Yeah. So we'll actually be talking about how fun and readable they are today. On this podcast sponsored by Product. How do you feel about Product this week, Eck?
Product's been letting me down a little bit because they never followed up with their initial emails. We've been getting other emails from people who are really impressed with the cinematic quality of our channel and are looking to buy ad space.
Yeah, there was someone who emailed us this week who saw we had a Twitter account and based on that wanted to make us influencers. So yeah, Thank you, Guy. But I'm
His name
Corey.
is Joe, and he's an angel.
I'm Corey, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. EckhartsLadder. Eck, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I finished Avatar: The Last Airbender.
That's true. I really do want to do like a topical, one of our topical episodes on Avatar, because I
feel like
think
it'd be a shame to limit it to just one.
So we should basically do with Avatar what Alex and Molly were doing with the Clone Wars, right? So just
that would be pretty cool. Maybe not they do like every arc, don't they? Or do they do every
I think they do every episode. It's a chronological rewatch of every episode, I think. So
yeah. I mean, it's great. I gotta say, I'll just give my brief impressions here. Wasn't sold until about halfway through the first season. I was like, this is basically exactly what I remembered as a kid. And then there's that episode, The Storm, where like it's kind of like the first bit of like actual drama, and it shows like Zuko's upbringing and why Aang was frozen in ice. That was like the first really, really good episode for me. And then, yeah, just uphill from there.
Yeah.
I think season 2 might actually even be my favorite, though. I think season 2 is I liked it a little bit better than season 3, I think.
Yeah, but
I
season
really
3 has Ember Island Players, which is the best episode of any show ever. So
yeah, that episode was awesome.
But yeah, so maybe we'll do that. But yeah, so next week we're going to be talking about the last volume of the Clone Wars from 2003. I guess that volume is from like 2004, 2005. But yeah, so
the second
that's kind of what's
and
coming
third
up.
season, right?
No, we watched the
Or
first and
it's,
second season. It's
Oh, yeah,
just
it's
the third
it's
season.
just the
left.
third season,
Yeah.
right?
So, but today, ISARD'S Revenge. So
Yeah.
you've already said you thought it was readable, which is great for a book, and fun.
Yeah, readable has got to be like one of those. If people were making a ticked or like a board of shit that I say in most episodes,
Slice of
readable
life,
would definitely
readable.
be there. Slice of life.
So as much as we make fun of sardonically, we're just as bad. But we also don't
Yeah.
go through an editing process. So,
I don't even self-edit, so
yeah.
But-
So
but-
it's caused a lot of issues on Twitter for me. But yeah.
Did you see what Twitter tweeted today? It was pretty funny. They were
What
like,
Twitter
when people, yeah, like the official Twitter account said, y'all can have an edit button when people start wearing masks, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, I sat down like I always do with these X-Wing books and just kind of get lost for the few hours it takes to read them.
Yeah.
Super fun, like I already said. I don't really know what else to say. Like this one was maybe a little goofier than some of the other ones
Yeah.
because of they very much should have just completely removed the whole clone thing. So the basic premise is that not only is ISARD back, we actually learned that later, but like ISARD had a clone, and she's back as well. So there's two ISARDs running
Yeah.
around, and they should have totally, and I say should they, I mean Michael Stackpole, really should have just kept it to one ISARD, and then if you really need another player, have it be like ISARD's assistant or something.
Yeah. It's like, if you want to make it that ISARD's back because of a clone, great. If you want to make it that ISARD survived, great. If you want to make it that ISARD never died and also her clone is still is here, then it's like, okay, you kind of picked too many of the options. But it'd be like if Dark Empire was about how Palpatine was using his clone bodies, but also he's just still there from the shaft.
Yeah, it's like if they somehow mixed like canon and legend, so there's like creepy chair Palpatine and creepy hanging dong Palpatine.
So
But,
this brings up the total of Imperial leaders who clone themselves pretty high. Like there's a high percentage of the ones like Dalla never died, so it didn't matter. Peline was old; he didn't really seem to care. But like Pestage, wasn't there a clone of Pestage somewhere too?
Mhm.
So there's
Yeah, I believe
Pestage,
so.
there's ISARD, there's Palpatine, there's
of
Thrawn.
course. Yeah.
But it kind of makes sense because like I'd clone myself. But
Yeah, now like at this point, why not? Because the clone in this is fairly competent. So like, why wouldn't you make a clone?
yeah,
And I remember we were wondering because when we read the Back to War, we weren't sure because we knew ISARD came back, but we couldn't remember if it was her clone that was killed or if it was her clone that came back. And the answer is kind of like a little bit of A, a little bit of B.
yeah. I don't think it was really necessary to have both of them. I guess it's kind of like for the reveal halfway through the book that she's not actually dead. Because you get the reveal that she's not dead, actually, it's a clone. And then you get the reveal later that she's also not dead. Which, I mean, you probably didn't need that. But there is one unforgivable crime that this book commits multiple times. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of a greatest hits of Rogue Squadron because there's a lot of the tropes that kind of come through in the previous X-Wing books. And which I don't have a problem with. It was like, I feel like if we had read this right after the last of the X-Wing books like that we'd done already,
Wait, Squadron 3, whatever.
Yeah, I would have been probably harder on this book just because it does kind of repeat some of those things like, oh, Wedge is back in his same disguise, and look who else is here, and
yeah, Min is there, and
yeah,
like all of they mix kind of like the best. Well, is Min the only Wraith that's on the team?
I think he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, we actually
right.
I'm glad that we did find out in this book what color ISARD'S eyes were a couple times, because
I've been wondering.
Yeah, it never came up. It just never came up in the previous book. So you're sitting there thinking like, okay, great, she's this cold calculating killer, but if only I knew what color her eyes were to go along with this.
Do her eyes reflect her glacial fury that like waits and is ready to strike with cold efficiency, or is it her fiery rage burning inside of her? Which element from within do her eyes represent? And we finally found out in the last book she'll ever be in.
That's why we're watching Isard Vitar, The Last Airbender, as our next episode. But
for real, people are gonna be there's like definitely. Oh man, I just knocked my coffee over. People are probably a little bit sad now because we made that joke every single book she's been in, and
we will find a way.
yeah.
But the crime that I'm building up to here, I don't want to interrupt you, but this is crucial. This is critical. The tide of data washed away the time. How did you know the tide was still rising? No, that's a regular note.
There's more. There's
what holes we need to trace to plug so it does not sink without a trace. Ocean of evil. No real way to know if we found all the currents running deep there.
There's one about algae and farming.
Yeah.
This one is like, because there's even a bit of meta commentary from Iella. About like how they've been hanging out with Akbar for too long because they start bringing up the ocean terminology, which it's funny. You're right. It is like a greatest hits of
from the depths always comes amazement.
Like that one's not even good.
He's just like every time he's on the page. I was reading this at Dana's place at first, and the first time it came up, I was like, "Oh my god!" She's like, "What's happening?" And then I showed her, and then a page later, there's another one. It's too much.
They do knock a couple out, like in the first time he gets a tie. So for those who don't know, in the X-Wing, because we shouldn't just assume that people are privy to our stupid fucking jokes.
This is a joke. I'm legitimately angry about this.
So there are a few things that are really common in Michael Stackpole's X-Wing novels. One is horniness, which wasn't really in this one, but the other is Corellians and odds, which we don't really get too many references to in this book. We get kind of a joke from one of the droids, Gate, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is Akbar making ocean, like analogies, I guess.
Yeah, it's like his one thing. It's all he has.
Metaphors?
Is he can make ocean metaphors and analogies and whatever. And he does it every time he's in a conversation in this book.
Like, people are so tired of his shit. Like, you're already in his dank ass office. He's got like Charlie's fans blowing water everywhere. Like, you're just sweating and dying, and he's just like, just doesn't stop.
Yeah, you can see him coming from a nautical mile away. But yeah, this is definitely the least horny of the of the Corrans we get, which good for him. But this is also this came out a year after I Jedi came out, which is kind of a retelling of some Star Wars events from Corran Horn's perspective, the main character. And so there's some allusions to that in there. Like Mirak says, "Oh, if I ever go missing," or that's 2 times you've been assumed dead, Corran. So next time it's my turn, and just a couple fun references to that I like.
Like we do get some kind of, because Corran at this point is still kind of trying to figure out whether he wants to be a Jedi. Well, he's not even trying to figure out whether he wants to be a Jedi. He's pretty much decided that he doesn't want to be. But there's like a ton of times where he's like, "Oh, I wish I had my Jedi lightsaber skills right now," or like, "I wish I had learned to be a Jedi so I could understand what sexy Isard's saying dressed in her workout gear."
Yeah, she does comment on how Corran has flat abs and Mirex must like them. If he has them, that was like, come on, this is so unnecessary.
And she's dressed exactly like she's like a comic book villain. Basically, she's wearing her same outfit, but it's just the gym version because she's wearing like her red admiral's uniform. It's just spandex,
Yeah, no one's ever allowed to change clothes in any sort of fictional media except for on The Weekenders, which is why The Weekenders is one of the best shows. They always had different outfits, and I could appreciate that.
Everybody's I forget how the
It's not everybody's working for the weekend.
No, I know.
I think that's where you were going with that.
No. I'm trying to remember how the theme song went. Hold on. Weekenders.
Best friends can do no wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's
pizza run. It's time for all of us to work it on out. Hey, that's what the weekend's all about.
Best buds hanging strong. Best friends can do no wrong. Just 2 days. We need more. Video games, I'll beat your score. Watch cartoons on TV. Drink that frosty choke of freeze. That's what we like to do. Come on, y'all. I'm talking to you.
Is that a Canadian show, or is that something we just imported from the States? I think they were from California or something, so it would have to be...
Yeah, they totally were. But, no, American.
Okay. So maybe this time someone will actually know what we're talking about instead of a 30-minute digression on Adam Grow and Red Green.
So should we actually set up like the situation of this book, like what's going on? No?
We never did. No, yeah, we should.
All right, so I actually love the way this book opens up.
Mm-hmm.
We basically get another perspective on the Battle of Bilbiringi, which is the ultimate battle in the Thrawn trilogy where Thrawn is killed. We get to see it because Wedge is in that book, but we get to see it now from all of Rogue Squadron's perspective, because obviously when that book came out, Wedge was a character, but Corran and the others weren't. So we get to see them do the run on the Golan platform, which is a pretty... Well, I would say it's pivotal in the battle, but Thrawn ends up getting killed anyway. So, like, the New Republic could have pretty much done anything as long as they didn't die. And then it's kind of fun because we get to see how they react to the news that Thrawn's dead, and they see the fleet breaking up and leaving. We actually learn a bit more about the tactics Thrawn uses at the battle, which is kind of cool. Yeah, it's good stuff. We get some New Republic assault frigates, which I always like.
Yeah, we do get a little bit after that of people throughout the book kind of being unsure if Thrawn's dead because they're just too scared of him, which kind of builds into how the Hand of Thrawn duology kind of plays out. But then we also have ISARD here coming back and kind of letting everyone know, hey, even if you think you killed some of us, we sometimes aren't dead or have clones, so wait a few months and Palpatine will come out.
Clone? Because she knew about the Empire of the Hand, right?
She knew Thrawn was out there doing something. She didn't necessarily know about the Empire of the Hand. I doubt she would know about Thrawn's clone, because like she sent him Soontir to keep him away. Yeah, to keep Thrawn from coming back and just kicking her out and taking over. But I think she was still kind of under the impression that he was out there on some general Imperial scouting mission kind of thing.
And this book actually came out after the Thrawn duology as well. So, like, we do get a reference to the Bothan kind of, like, how there's, a big Bothan secret that if people discover, it could be big shit. I can't remember if there are any other references to the Thrawn duology. Did you pick up on any?
No, that one was kind of the major one that I saw. I didn't notice anything else. It was mostly just iJedi references that I kind of picked up on. Yeah. And nothing about any kind of lead up to Dark Empire, which there was a question about, other than Wedge getting his promotion, which kind of had to happen now.
That's exactly what I had. Yeah, this book does a good job of kind of... Because I was trying to remember whether it was Dark Empire or the Jedi Academy trilogy, which had him as general. But yeah, it's Dark Empire, isn't it?
I think so, because I think like him and Lando and Han all get referred to as generals by that point. So they kind of have to deal with... No, well, I don't think anyone ever deals with Han and Lando getting recommissioned properly, but Wedge, at least we get his story here, because that's been kind of a running theme in the X-Wing books, is that Wedge doesn't want to be promoted out of his squadron. He thinks the squadron is where he's most comfortable and where he can make the most difference. But Ackbar has been kind of pushing for him to get a promotion, and they had their bet with Wraith Squadron where Wedge was saying, I can make this extra asset for the New Republic, and if it fails, I'll go and be a general. But it succeeded, so he didn't have to. But then Ackbar kind of convinces him that it's necessary.
Yeah, because he's like holding his entire squadron back.
Yeah. He goes under his head to the squadron pilots and is like, yeah, none of these people are going to take a promotion unless you do.
Yeah, and I like that. I thought it was a good... I feel like this book did do a good job of... Because it came out, long after the Thrawn trilogy. It came out after the other X-Wing books. I felt like it just generally did a good job of kind of tying things together. Like, it pulled from lots of sources. Like, I liked how the Nogri show up at the end. Obviously, Talon. The second that Whistler left to go meet a contact, I was like, that's 1,000% either going to be Talon Card or Mara Jade.
Yeah. I really like those chapters. I think it's just 2 that we get with Whistler and Gate, but the droid adventures are always fun.
I will say, too, one thing I like about this book, too, that I honestly couldn't even fully appreciate was it seemed to have a lot of tie-in to the Rogue Squadron comics, which I've only partially read, and I read those as a kid because my dad just bought them for me, and, like, he didn't know anything about them. I didn't know anything about them, but I was, like, trying to remember the other day, there's a shot or a comic where I think General Som disables Soontir Fel, in his Y-wing, he disables Fel, and I just remember that from that image just like burned into my mind for some reason, just because it was like a Star Wars thing I didn't understand. So yeah, it's cool that it makes all those references. Like, it talks about the other battles they've had, like at Surtik, and yeah, those are comic battles, and there's that character that died, and they were talking about that again, all comic stuff. I thought that was really cool, even if I didn't fully appreciate it, I guess. Yeah,
and that's probably something that we'll be covering in the future as well as the Rogue Squadron comics. So
there's a lot of them, though, I think.
Yeah, well, we probably won't cover all of them unless the podcast goes for about 30 years. But
yeah,
the comics are always quick to read, like...
That's true.
So even if we did like 30 in an episode, we'd probably be able to do it. Just like with Dark Empire, it took maybe an hour to read each one of the books 3 times for the podcast. So maybe for one of the intermediate topical episodes.
Speaking of comics, just a little off track. And Generals, I was reading Crimson Empire 3 a while ago, which takes place... It's not that bad. I don't mind Crimson Empire 3. I like it better than 2. And one I quite like. But it's got NX Deviant in it, right? And I didn't realize this, but they have Han still as a general with like in command of a on Calamari, like a New Republic fleet. Which is pretty cool. Even though it's like 13 or 14 ABY, so I guess he keeps his commission for a while after Dark Empire.
Or he just comes and goes. But yeah.
The Lusankya is also in it, like, and I didn't realize that the Lusankya saw that much action in the book. So there's a few. If you're ever doing a lore video on the Lusankya, there's a few more images in there for you.
Wow.
Which is quite relevant.
Well, yeah, because ISARD wants it back. So that's kind of what she's going for, and it kind of makes all her stuff with Rogue Squadron just seem kind of pointless. But
yeah, she should have killed Rogue Squadron like 100%.
Yeah, there's no real point. Like, I got kind of confused about the chapters that she was in with Wedge and with Colonel Vosik. I forget his name. I didn't write it down. But yeah, so I feel like that could have been better.
And again, this is the whole problem of having the two ISARD'S. Like, you've got to make motivations for both of them. Like, they've got to be acting differently. And like the real ISARD especially, I just found to be kind of boring. Like, they really should have just kept her to working with like with the Empire, because it's just, she's not convincing as a neutral party. And like, you know she's gonna screw them over, and it's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, and like ISARD'S clone, or whichever one stays around, you could convincingly make them be working with Krennel to cause this distraction while she goes to Bilbringi and gets Lusankya back. Yeah. But instead, you kind of split that, and all I was kind of waiting for with that was that there'd be like some kind of bigger reckoning between the two. Mm-hmm. But ISARD Prime knows there's a clone, obviously. But ISARD clone gets told like 3 seconds before she dies that she's a clone, and there's not really a point to it. Like Corran just gets to rub that in her face a little, I guess. But
yeah, totally. It's just muddies the water, and like clones are already a little too prevalent in Legends, so like to have ISARD be cloned, just like whatever. I do like that they pick back up on the trail of hunting the Lusankya survivors, though, because they're still captured. Yondodan and the others are still in Imperial hands. Like I thought it would have been interesting if like ISARD wasn't really alive, but it was just like kind of her specter, or like she still, yeah, exactly. She still has influence over everybody.
Yeah, like, or what if they'd done it this way? So there's 2 clones instead of ISARD Prime and ISARD Clone. One clone has fiery red eyes. One clone has icy blue eyes, and that's kind of your only hint that they're different people for the whole time. Everyone else thinks they're the same. They don't even necessarily know about each other, but it's like the twin twists on Big Brother when they do that. And Krennel gets an extra prize if he can figure it out before the end of the book.
Twin twists. That's funny. So, I mean, what happened to ISARD in Back to War is still kind of confusing. So there was nobody in the shuttle, I guess.
There was I think it was a pilot in the shuttle, and she was like either a pilot or it might even have been droid controlled, I forget. But she was like piping in her communications, which were then getting.
That was real ISARD doing that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So how did clone ISARD get injured? Because she has like an injury that Krennel talks about when they first see her.
I forget. I think that was addressed, but I don't think it registered with me.
That's the whole problem. Like, it's just too confusing, you know?
Yeah, it's not even just that it's confusing. It's that it's confusing and kind of pointless. Mm-hmm. Like, totally. There's no reason for this other than ISARD being in charge. So ISARD, the clone, is working with Dalek Krennel, who's a little kind of minor warlord that the New Republic decides they can go after kind of safely, and to just show that they're still active in the galaxy, and that the Imperials have nowhere to hide. And they're kind of using the fact that Krennel murdered one of the former Imperial leaders, Sate Pestage, as their justification for doing this. But ISARD is now working with Krennel, saying she's going to handle the political side of things, whereas Krennel can handle the military side of things. But the ISARD's plans kind of work in getting the New Republic to go after the targets they want, or getting more support rallied to them. But I don't know. So real ISARD was also within the hegemony, I guess, following fake ISARD. And fake ISARD was just made so that ISARD could handle the prisoners of the Lusankya herself. Yeah. And by herself, she meant a clone of herself, who she didn't tell about herself. That, I'm sure, would have gotten awkward for them at some point. But again, we never find out, because they were just already... Yeah.
They're like completely separated, so
yeah,
it's convoluted, but basically there's 2 ISARs working. You learn about the second one midway through. Goddamn Thrawn can't even get one clone off, and she's got one running around, and she's still alive. Kind of BS. So
yeah. See, if Thrawn had just let more of his clones out when he'd
yeah.
And there's actually some hints in like NJO and later that there might actually be a Thrawn clone or 2 that exists in the unknown regions. Yeah, but that's a topic for another couple books. But yeah, like the real ISARD is kind of screwing with the fake ISARD and trying to plant more stuff the New Republic can get, because the way she kind of lures in Rogue Squadron is by And the fake ISARD really wants to kill Rogue Squadron. But
Mm-hmm.
the real ISARD plants a lab that is allegedly working on a Death Star, like a mini Death Star, which gets referred to as
like
Pulsar
a capital
Station.
ship killer, kind of.
Yeah, it's like Death Star 2, but focusing more on shooting ships with the super laser.
Yeah.
And so this gets used by the New Republic as further justification for invading the Kutric hegemony, which Krennel says, actually, no, this isn't me, and makes up this thing about how he was good friends with someone from Alderaan and he would never want to do this. And yeah. So ISARD Prime is trying to frame Krennel an ISARD clone, but it's... And then, like, there's no reason for Rogue Squadron to work with her after they find out that she basically got them all... got 4 of them killed as far as they know, to lure them in to work with her on a raid to get this weapon that doesn't exist. So I don't see why Wedge would agree to cooperate with her at first. The New Republic had better plans to deal with Krennel in the first place. They didn't need ISARD's help for any of this. It didn't really amount to that much.
Dead.
Yeah,
I feel like he was going to be killed if...
Yeah, but they try to set it up as if like they have this uneasy alliance towards the same goal. It's like, no, you're not even really being allies. You are at best being coerced, and you're not really, like, they're acting like they're all buddies. I don't know.
Yeah. I did like some of the, not really camaraderie, but the back and forth between the Imperials and the Rogues. There was kind of like a bit of respect there, although I do like how, I think it's Wedge in the training sim just fucking wrecks it's Corran.
Corran.
He takes out like 3 of the TIE defenders with like no effort.
I really like the dinner scene with Wedge in his Colonel Rote disguise.
Yeah. That was really funny. It was just like, basically he's talking to this Imperial who I guess was actually part of the 181st, which is like one of the elite fighter wings within the Empire. And he's like drastically overstating their effectiveness against Rogue Squadron. And then he's like, you might not know this, but people like Wedge and Tycho, they're killed all the time, just replaced by clones. Of course,
just because that's what the Empire does.
Yeah. Wedge is sitting there like, that's fascinating.
So I didn't check this properly, but I think he was talking about a mission when the 181st was still the 180 worst after Soontir was just sent there, but before he reworked it. So he's kind of proud of being part of them when they were just a shit unit where the worst people got sent. But I'm not 100% sure on the timeline on that. That is what I think, because I think that battle that they're talking about is kind of the one where Soontir started to turn it around. But it's been a while since I've read those. I think that's from the comics as well, because I did a video about Soontir a couple of years ago and focused a lot on that.
It's kind of weird how frequently Soontir is brought up in the books, but how little he actually appears. Because like he's brought up in almost every book that Wedge is in, but he doesn't really feature very much.
Yeah, it's not until like much later with I guess even in NJO and Dark Nest he's mentioned, but he's not.
Because, yeah, he's in some of the early NJO stuff, isn't he? When
no, Jag is.
But isn't he still in the? Isn't Soontir in the Chiss Ascendancy still? There's a few.
He's in the Hand of Thrawn duology when Luke and Mara are in the Empire of the Hand. But
I was thinking there was like a scene where like, isn't there a scene on like the Chiss capital where, he sees Soontir, or where he sees Jag off or something like, like when Jag leaves, like when they activate like Jag and the rest of his squadron. I can't remember what it's called at the time, but doesn't Soontir have like a meeting with him?
That's not in the actual NJO books. It might be in like a comic or something.
Oh, okay.
But it's not in the NJO books. There's a scene later, I think it might be Legacy of the Force even, where like Luke is on Chilla and Soontir's there. But that's much later. Because there's that picture of Soontir and Luke and whomever on Chilla, but
interesting.
For the summit.
So there's a big portion of this book we haven't talked about, or we haven't spoke about yet, and that's like the it's very heavy-handed in a way, kind of commentary on like affirmative action and racism and stuff like that. Especially, it's a real thing early on in the book because like this like Imperial Warlord basically is holding up he's not like plainly racist. He's like, every species and being can come to our part of the galaxy, but we're going to treat them equal, basically suggesting that since the New Republic took power, that humans are losing their dominance and they're giving it up to aliens.
It's kind of like saying that, oh, well, the aliens can have their places, but this is the place for humans. You can come here if you're an alien, but this is a human place. We're going to treat you equally, maybe.
Yeah, we're going to treat you equally, but just so you know, equally means that humans are a lot more epic.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I took that to be like as a criticism of like those who deny affirmative action and stuff like that. Kind of like, because the only reason why aliens are so screwed in the galaxy is because they've been under the rule of Palpatine for 18 or 25 years or however long, and he's just been, completely human centric.
They kind of hint at the reason that like Bothan politics is what it is because it was kind of necessary under the Empire for them to survive, rather than being something that goes back like super far. But should we wait until later to talk about Asyr's plan? Because I think it's kind of dumb.
I think we can talk about it now, because when I was reading this, I was expecting this to be like a much more important plot thread throughout the book. So basically Asyr and Gavin, who I think Asyr's first introduced in Wedge's Gamble, because isn't she on Coruscant? Isn't she like part of that, like, because they almost kill Gavin because they think he's like racist?
She was leading some of those people that were like hiding from the and
then she's actually Empire. Also a Bothan, she's like a Bothan special forces person, isn't she?
Yeah, she'd at least gone to the Bothan Martial Academy, and then she got pulled into Rogue Squadron.
Because they needed a body, really.
Yeah, there was a few people that they pulled from that kind of camp that got attacked by the Empire, and that's how they
them in the I think she probably flies a Z-95 during that final battle, but I can't remember. But then she ends up joining Rogue Squadron and falls in love with Gavin, of course.
So they're dating for a while, and it turns into a thing where like Borsfelia is saying that it's sending the wrong message to the Bothans that you, as the most famous Bothan, why don't you just eat all the other Bothans? No, but like you could be with anyone in our society that you want, and you're just feeding into the human stereotypes by saying
his logic's so fucking dumb.
Yeah,
like even for Borsfelia, he's basically like, if you date a human, you're basically saying that your fellow aliens aren't good enough. But like, isn't that also saying that you're good enough for a human? Like, it's just like the logic makes no sense. And he sees like her dating a human as like the downfall of the Bothan race. Like he puts a lot of pressure on her because her and Gavin want to adopt a child, and he's like, listen, it's just not going to happen. Like, I'll block any adoption of a Bothan child, and I'll make your life miserable, or you can break up with Gavin. So he's putting as much like pressure as he can on her. I didn't really understand it. Like, I think
this sort of reflects a thing that somewhat exists in real life that we're probably not the right people to talk about, and I don't think Michael Stackpole was the right person to write about either. But as far as like Asyr's plans go, is that there's the raid at Coruscant, is it? Corvus Minor, not Coruscant, different planet. Corvus Minor, where that's where the rogues are trying to find the information about Pulsar Station. Yeah. And so a third of the squadron is presumed killed in action. So Wes Jansen, Asyr, Slee, and Lur. I think Lur. Yeah. Slee and Lur were the two that were introduced in this book, which makes them almost guaranteed. The fact that they didn't get any lines makes it almost guaranteed that they were going to die, except for the one chapter in the bar where Slee kind of explains why Gavin's weird for adopting, I guess.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
But yeah, so Asyr and Jansen aren't actually dead. They get recovered by Booster, who was brought there with Iella and Mirax. So they think that everyone else in the squadron's dead. The squadron thinks that Jansen and Asyr are dead. Really, it's just the two people that none of them cared about that were dead, so huge relief for everyone. And Asyr's plan at this point, because she's presumed dead, to make changes in Bothan society is that she's going to let everyone keep thinking they're dead, give up, like, let Gavin go the rest of his life thinking she's dead, and she's going to start a new identity playing by the less savory
most
rule.
likely.
Yeah,
somehow as a peasant, like, change Bothan society.
Yeah,
like,
she's going to work her way back up from the bottom of Bothan society to reset it by their tactics. And it's like, no, but you're currently in a position as one of the most respected people in the New Republic to challenge Phalia.
To Borsk Phalia.
Yeah, and you're just taking away any opposition he has.
And if you do become powerful again somehow, Borsk Phalia is going to know who you are.
Yeah, like, and you're not going to have any of the clout with the rest of the Bothan society or the rest of the
New Republic generally, because she's a war hero. She's part of Rogue Squadron, so it's like
like she could have leveraged that in some way, but instead she's trying to do something that she could have probably done with the influence she gained, and just kind of resetting. Like, I would have understood it more if it was, I'm leaving Rogue Squadron after this happened to me because I was putting myself and my squad mates in danger with how ham I was going, because she was like shredding Imperials, but
yeah, that was awesome.
She was kind of just going at it, and everyone else was both worried and blown away.
Is pretty cool.
Yeah,
like she like basically like in that, so they get ambushed, and it's like, I think it's 36 ships against is it 12? No, it's only against 4, I think, because it's just one flight.
Yeah.
And the rogues kill, or that one flight kill over a half, and she basically kills 6 on her own and goes out killing 2 more, and it's really cool. But did you find it kind of weird? Like, to me, it felt like they totally just dropped that plot line. Like they focus a lot on the racism stuff and the whole Bothan society stuff early on, especially with like how the hegemony is like going for that sort of like humanocentric position, but I don't feel like they paid that off throughout the rest of the book. I felt like it was set up, but then it was kind of dropped.
Yeah, I think it was intended to be set up for like a future thing, but I don't know that Asyr ever shows up anywhere else in the future. Is she in Mercy Kill, maybe? No, so. She's mentioned in Dark Tide Onslaught, and that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah. And there's a lot of stuff later with like the Bothans joining the Confederacy. So that might have been a good place for her to come up again or something. But
even in the Thrawn duology, where like, you know, the Bothawee's like a major part of that whole story, because they're basically, it's like a powder keg over Bothawee, because people believe Bothans have been up to some shit, and in fact they have. But yeah, the Bothans are just awful. Like, they're just terrible.
Except for Asyr, Trace Crafay, and Laren Crafay is awful. I think there's another Bothan who I can never remember if he's awful or not. One of the admirals from later on, like Legacy of the Force. But Traced a real one. Asyr's a real one. Borsk is a piece of shit. So it's not just Bothans are awful. It's basically just Borsk is awful.
Well, I mean, Bothan society like encourages people like Borsk as well. Speaking of awful, Mirax, so they go to that big party, right? And that guy basically breaks his back and kills himself. Mirax says to Corran, like, you look worse than when you came home from the Lusankya. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Mirax, like, isn't that a little soon?
Yeah.
Like, he just saw someone die, like, who was on the Lusankya and died because of their programming. Like, what are you doing? And I don't know. I just, like, Mirax, like, you're usually smarter than this.
I don't know if it was just a way for Michael Stackpole to be like, this is why he did it, to kind of feel like he was part of that again and go back to that shitty low point in his life.
Yeah.
But I don't think Mirax would actually do that. It wasn't, it was kind of a weirdly written thing. So
I do like, how like the guy's described as like breaking his back and bleeding out of his eyes.
Yeah, that
Corran
was.
goes to check his pulse. Imagine you get your like it's just like a guy gets his head blown off and like, performing like chest compressions.
There is a movie where like the head gets blown off of someone and they check the pulse. Or no, I think it's like actual instructions on figuring out if someone's dead or that. I think no, it's a joke about a doctor in court being asked how he knew someone was dead, and they go through a bunch of like medical signs and his head was over there. But
His head was over there. His head was in a different room than the rest of his body. Usually not a good start. I will say though, on the whole, this book really kind of made me think we don't really see a whole lot of like mixed species families in Star Wars.
No.
Like we do see some, but it would be cool to see, because like when they talked about adopting an Ithorian or like whatever else, I was like, man, that's not even like ever occurred to me that that's something that people in Star Wars could and probably would do.
yeah,
So hopefully we get something like that in canon, because I thought it was a cool idea for them to adopt some kids. I didn't know what happened to her after this book, so yeah.
and like we do find out in other parts of Legends that they're actually just wrong. Humans and Bothans can have babies. So there's that Jedi Knight in the the Sith Wars, New Sith Wars, I think. And I did a video on species
My favorite
being
video you've ever
compatible.
made. It's like, what was the title again?
Something about hybrid breeding or something. Interspecies
No, the title was
babies.
funnier than that. Hold on. Corey's Datapad
It was pretty good.
breeding.
Don't look for that.
It's not coming up. Oh, and the ability for babies. Interspecies relationship. Okay, and the ability for babies. That second part. That was really fun. You should have just called it interspecies relationship and can babby be formed.
That was kind of what I was going for, but
Yeah.
I felt like the ability for babies, the kind of bouncy syllables
Ability
there.
for babies. Fuck, that made me laugh. That was a good video.
But yeah, that's something that I always get comments on, because I have a big part of that is about Cut's kids in the Clone Wars. And
they're adopted, right?
yeah, there's always comments saying, that's actually not Cut's kids. But nowhere in the video did I say they were biologically Cut's kids. Their father was also just a human, and he married into the family. Or he kind of, not, I don't think they were married, but whatever the local equivalent of marriage was. But yeah, they were half human,
She was
half
a Twi'lek, right?
Yeah. So
Wasn't
their
she really
biological
sexy
father
too?
was what?
Wasn't she really sexy too?
She was a cartoon Twi'lek. Eck, what do you want from me?
Saying. Just saying.
This guy. She was no turtle runner.
Yeah, that's true.
We'd have to get Corran as a special guest on the podcast to rank more characters.
Yeah, I think he'd agree.
What if Asyr and Gavin were just like doing anal the whole time?
Yeah, I was gonna make that joke, but I was trying to think of a funnier way to put it, but
Oh.
yeah,
I was trying to think of a cleaner way to put it, but there's no.
it's possible, because it's just like he just doesn't know.
You just get a scene of like Mirax, Yella, and Asyr like it's been so many times I don't know if I should correct him, if it's just gonna be embarrassing.
Yeah, it's like that's something that Corran could have given like really good advice on, probably. And it's funny because right after Asyr's presumed dead, Corran brings up that conversation where they talked about his Solonian love life. I was just thinking that like, yeah.
Okay, that was another thing. There was the scene right after Asyr died where Corran is trying to cheer up Gavin almost. And Corran is just the absolute worst friend when it comes to people grieving. It's like,
yeah, I know.
your romantic partner just died. And Corran's like, have I ever told you about the way that my parents died. You know how my dad died, because I talk about it all the time. But I also was somewhat fond of my mother, and she got hit by a truck.
Was that the first time that they had mentioned his mother's death?
No, it sounded familiar when I was reading it in this. So I think it was mentioned, like the cause of death had been mentioned before. This is more in depth than we ever got.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know, when you lose someone, first off you want some time to just kind of decompress on your own. No one does or should expect you to immediately be like, okay. But the way Corran always handles these situations is going in and saying like, yes, I was sad too once. But like, no one gives a fuck. This is
it's like Gavin's trying to get away from him after Asyr dies, and Corran's just like older, so it's like higher rank. It's kind of awkward.
Yeah, and like Corran is not someone who deals well with this stuff. He hasn't shut up about it in every opportunity he gets for years and years to just bring up the fact that not his mom.
Also,
who cares about his mom? But his dad, at least. I'm
not trying to be like disrespectful to anyone who's lost a parent, but you're expected to have your parents die eventually.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's different to lose, like, not saying it's like the pain's not comparable, but he just lost somebody who's planning his entire life with. So he's basically lost his entire future. He's lost his babies that he was going to adopt. So yeah, it's pretty messed up. Yeah,
it's not. Yeah, I just can't imagine what kind of headspace you have to be in to see someone grieving and be like, you know what I should do? I should make this about me.
Yeah. On a different note, this book continues the X-Wing kind of standard of minimalism in the Star Wars universe. It's like at any given point, the Rebels or the New Republic have like 3 ships they can spare.
Yeah. And they all happen to be at every engagement because like Seryanka was at Bilbringi. And there's like 12 people in the room for, I don't know how they were chosen to be in that conference room with Wedge. Because some were like captains, some were admirals, some were generals. But they were all in on this. And I don't know, was Yonka deployed to Kutrick? Because otherwise, then maybe it was just the people who went to Kutrick. But I think
so.
Was he? Okay, I must have missed that.
I could be mistaken.
Because that would make more sense. But I might have just missed something there.
Yeah, because it kind of did set that up early on, right?
Yeah. And they kind of used some of the ship tactics for talking about how Wedge didn't think he was suitable for this. Because there's one of the battles, I think it was the Linad battle, where Direption, which is one of Krennel's Star Destroyers, was kind of allowing, I forget which way it went, but I think Direption was allowing Moonshadow to do whatever it wanted so that it could fire on Aretta Bell's ship. And Wedge was like, I don't understand why you would open yourself up to basically this full onslaught from Moonshadow just to get at Aretta Bell's ship. And how he wouldn't be good at making those decisions. He'd always want to try to minimize casualties, and that's one of the things that, or minimize damage even, and that's one of the things that comes up a lot in the book is like acceptable losses, which I guess when he becomes a general is the first time he's ever had to think about that, but he does have to think about that in the earlier X-Wing books.
Yeah, so I agree, because I didn't really follow that, because he said he's never had to make, but he's gone into missions where he's expected people to die.
Yeah, and he even talks about that, where like he... like the fact that he remembered Lear and Slee's names meant that they must have grown on him. Or that he thought of them as their names instead of just like Rogue X and Y.
Yeah. Funny
I didn't
then
remember
Aretta Bell gets trashed at the Battle of Arinda.
Yeah, she gets absolutely demolished. So
it's kind of funny too, because in this book they describe, speaking of the Battle of Arinda, they describe the Lusankya as being basically finished, but it doesn't really enter service for quite a while, unless it's possible that maybe it was around during Dark Empire and then it got damaged again.
So when they were refitting Lusankya, it was initially more as a research station, which you kind of get in this book, where it was just kind of the tip of the ship. But that gets kind of expanded to being more of the ship's purpose. So it was kind of armed. It was at least operational. Yeah. And then Shadow Hand is what makes the New Republic start having the debate of like, okay, do we actually need one of these bigger ships? Yeah. And they fully kit out Lusankya after that point. And that's when they start really going ahead with the Viscount, which is why you can research the Viscount at tech level 3 in Thrawn's Revenge. But
epic. Is Krennel? Is Krennel in Thrawn's Revenge? Krennic, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Krennel is in Thrawn's Revenge. We've actually got a whole campaign set up around ISARD'S Revenge, called ISARD'S Revenge. Cool. Where the Empire takes it. I believe so. I've never played it. I'm sure it's great. Yeah. There's so many of them. So many factions.
There are a lot of them.
But Jord does a lot of like story setup for those smaller GCs, so there's a few events in there, there's a bunch of characters in there, and I think you can actually re-steal Lusankya in the GC.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah.
Why do you think they chose Pulsar Station as a name?
Because it pulses. It had the gravity well generators. Those pulse. It pulses the beam at stuff, and they blow up.
Kind of dumb not to put gravity well generators in the Death Star, now that I think about it. I mean, like, you might as well.
Yeah, but you start making budget cuts. The planet's not going to jump away, and it's going after the planet.
Yeah, true.
You can just deploy an immobilizer with it, because maybe there was more than 6 in the galaxy at that point.
Yeah. Speaking of immobilizers, what did you think of the final battle?
I didn't like the final battle as much as I liked the other two, honestly. A lot of it just kind of went in one eye and out the other, I guess. But I really liked the Linod battle. I really liked the Corvus Minor battle. I always want to say Corson for that, but yeah,
I think Akbar's Thrawn Pincer is a lot less interesting because the book doesn't do a good job of setting up why Thrawn Pincers don't really work. Because that's what the Thrawn trilogy does. It spends a lot of time talking about how difficult hyperspace jumps is, and it kind of registers people's surprise when he uses them. And there is one throwaway line basically about how an accurate jump like this is almost impossible. But yeah, there's not like the full setup, and then there's not really the payoff. So it's just kind of a thing that Ackbar does. I do think it's kind of still a fun idea. But
yeah, like they were still trying to take advantage of the whole, well, did they actually just send the wrong ships at the wrong time? Yeah. But to the extent that worked, it was only because some of the setup was confusing, and like you kind of just knew that more stuff was coming. So it was to me, like I still enjoyed it, but it was kind of the weakest of the three to me. I was kind of more getting ahead to the parts that were dealing with like actually killing Isard and seeing the really terrible attempt at actually boarding the Lusankya, which probably like never would have worked. And like, yeah, good on Iella and Mirax and Booster for figuring it out and getting there, but it kind of seems like they would have had that handled even without them. Where wasn't it just like they told one vortex and I was like, okay, I'm gonna shut that shit down. And he like locked a door.
You didn't need to be dramatic about it. Like I could have just vented them all. I gotta say though, Bill Bringy would not be my choice as my SSD fixer-upper shipyard after how much heat it's gotten lately. But
yeah, like they just took control of it. If they want to set up anything that's even like remotely secret, because Wedge is surprised that they're fixing Lusankya, but they just I don't know.
Yeah, because he finds it earlier at like a staff meeting.
Yeah, because one of the admirals is like, "Hey, what if we just drop an SSD on him?" And they're like, it doesn't work yet. But Wedge's like, you're fixing it?
He's like, that's actually kind of epic.
Can I fly that? I want to stab something with it.
Get your chance. Don't worry.
That'll be a fun one to get to.
That will be, yeah. I feel like we've covered a lot. This book, like, it's a pretty basic plot, pretty easy to understand. I will say, like, one thing about having two ISARD'S as well is that Krennel doesn't really get the time he needs to develop as a good villain. I didn't feel a whole lot when he died at the end.
Yeah, like every scene he has, it starts with him, and then Isard just kind of comes in and takes it over. And there's some stuff about how, like, oh, he's learning how to play politics, but he does, like, one semi-okay thing, and that was it. Because there was even the thing where Rogue Squadron is getting deployed by Isard to join Krennel's forces, and that's how they're kind of pointlessly, but they're in God, how did I not know the word? They're joining Krennel's forces, and he does kind of line up and meet them, and Wedge has to find ways to justify the non-human. So you've got the Corran who's like, well, the New Republic's not going to let me kill him on Calamari.
Yeah.
And so Krennel says, I'm impressed by most of you. Okay. So it kind of just felt like the Tavira thing being redone, but kind of with less development around Krennel than Tavira. And that's kind of what I was saying with the greatest hits thing, where there were just kind of a lot of beats that were repurposed from some of the other X-Wing books or iJedi. And I feel like they could have been put to maybe some better use.
I will say too, this book is a lot less character focused than the other X-Wing novels I noticed. Especially like the squad relationships. We get a lot of that in almost every book.
Yeah.
There's usually like at least one scene where the squad comes together, whatever else. This one is really more about plot, which I definitely kind of missed because I like the squad interaction. Usually there's like a new character who, like, you know, the team finds they have to trust him or whatever else. Everyone has a moment to shine. They get their skills used in some way, but not really. In this case,
because we get the bar scene with Slee, Wedge, or not Wedge, Slee, Corran, and Gavin, I think, and then I enjoyed that one. But then we get the scene with Gavin and Asyr, and that kind of goes nowhere because Asyr gives up their relationship for reforming wealth in society, but we never hear about that again.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other stuff is just like Corran being a horrible friend to Gavin. So
yeah, Corran having to deal with his grief again, basically. Yeah.
All right. Do you want to get on to questions then?
Yeah, I think so. Let's just check. First off, we have one from Joel Davis, who says, do you think in hindsight it would have been interesting to make ISARD'S Revenge a more direct prequel to Dark Empire? I remember the first time I read it, I thought we'd get more build-up to those events, but was sadly disappointed we didn't. Of course, now I know what the books versus comics blah 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 blah. Great question, actually. I kind of just wish we had gotten some sort of tie into Dark Empire. Like long after it had come out. Like rather than in the source books. We do get stuff in like the Essential Guide to Warfare, whatever else, but I do wish there had been a novel set during that time.
Like I was thinking about what that could kind of look like in this book, and maybe some conversations between Isard and Krennel that kind of refers to the fact that they're being kind of called to the core by Palpatine or someone claiming to be Palpatine, maybe an acknowledgement of that. But part of what makes the Dark Empire campaign so effective is that it was just out of nowhere as far as the New Republic was concerned, except for the disappearance of some forces. So I feel like it would be very difficult to pull that off while still keeping a self-contained plot. So you'd need either a couple books or a much longer book. So I like the idea, but I don't know that ISARD'S Revenge would have been the best place to do it, unless it is just kind of a couple references to it.
Yeah. This book does do a good job of not reconciling Dark Empire and the Throne trilogy, but it does do a good job of kind of continuing to bridge the gap between like the Warlord era and the Thrawn era, because it talks about like how warlords were giving money to Thrawn, like they were sending resources his way. I just thought that was interesting.
Before we go on to other questions, I do have one other note that kind of relates to a discussion we were having a few episodes ago, where we were talking about legitimacy and what legitimizes the New Republic versus like, so you were kind of coming at it from law framework, where I was talking about it as like the more just how does the New Republic see themselves and what is their claimed legitimacy, and that kind of came up in this book a little bit.
Yeah.
Where there was a quote where I think Jansen even just lays out, I think it's Jansen, maybe Wedge, lays out my argument explicitly of like the New Republic is just directly claiming anything that belonged to the Empire as them, because they see themselves as the legitimate Empire, like the legitimate successor to the Republic, and the Empire was this aberration that was illegal. And
Right.
so I'm
Okay,
just
they're
going to
Yeah.
claim that as a victory for that discussion for myself based on that.
I forget what I was reading the other day that kind of talked about that, and basically the Rebel Alliance considered calling themselves like the Republic in exile. Basically, they've been ousted by like an illegitimate government. So yeah, I think that does make sense. And there is kind of a lot of that in the book, like how, because there's still, the galaxy's coming more under the sway of the New Republic than it was in the earlier X-Wing series, but they are still dealing with like, how do they, openly attack, because they can openly attack the Empire, but if they fail, it's going to look terrible. If they're too aggressive, they're just going to look Imperial, which they do later on. Well, mostly when they're the GA, so it's kind of an interesting discussion there.
Yeah. So we had one other question from Colvin. I have two questions. What is one thing that Star Wars Legends does better than Star Wars Canon? What is one thing that Star Wars Canon does better than Star Wars Legends? Thank you. Do you want to start with this?
Legends definitely does the post-Endor stuff better. I think they definitely do the post-Endor stuff better. Canon probably does. I'm trying to think of one thing I really like more in Canon. Canon really hasn't covered that much in the way of new ground. I'd say I like the Rogue One story better than the associated stuff from Legends.
The 7 different ways that Kyle Katarn stole the Death Star plans.
Yeah.
So like,
I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think that there's enough varying quality in both Legends and Canon that it's hard to say like there's one thing, like, because it's always such a broad array. But I think that Canon came in from the start with an idea that they wanted to have it as one consistent storyline, whereas Legends, you have like the Marvel comics earlier on, and then you had the way that the post-Endor stuff handled the Clone Wars, then you had the prequels come in and change the Clone Wars. With this, obviously it's not 100% consistent. Nothing can be or is intended to be or will be.
Or
but,
should be.
Yeah. But there's at least like there's less variance in that way, and I think Canon has been a bit more consistent with that. But then that also means the flip side of that is that Legends did have a couple more of these other things that, well, they may be weirder or wackier, they were also just fun stories to have, like the Nagai and Toph War, the way the Marvel comics did a lot of that. It's not always to my personal taste, but a lot of people really enjoy that, and it's the kind of story that it's harder to get now. Even with later Legends, it's the kind of thing that we didn't really get, because they were moving more towards having that one, like Star Wars expanded universe is one storyline. Whereas before it was just, if you owned the license, you do something and it would fit in some way maybe. But yeah, like when it comes to individual stories, like I love Rogue One. I really like the way that Timothy Zahn's developed as an author, so I kind of prefer the way the new Thrawn trilogies are written, even if I think, like, I agree with some of your criticisms there that they ultimately don't feel like they're going anywhere, because they are kind of like put in as these supporting things for the, like, there's a definite way that Canon sees what it's putting out as, like, the books are there to support the movies, the comics are there to support the books and movies. So that hierarchy exists in a way that didn't exist before. And I'm hoping that with the sequel trilogy done, there isn't the same need that, like, oh, well, these books are just going to have to go up to what happens in the sequel trilogy. You can't really introduce too much new. And I think that's where, to me, their relative strengths and weaknesses lie. Which doesn't really say much about any individual story. There can be some that are great or bad in both. But as far as like the overall ideas of the paths the universe takes.
I mean, we'll have to see. Like, for me, the one thing that we never got a really, I guess, Clone Wars, but we never got anything like the Mandalorian and Legends either. Like a true, really high budget live action show. I mean, Clone Wars was really high budget as well, but I don't think it was ever as mainstream as the Mandalorian has been.
No, and like the Mandalorian can kind of stand on its own in a way that the Clone Wars can't, because like if you've never seen Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith, then it's just some people fighting some droids and whatever. But the Mandalorian, the story, because it is so self-contained, which is something I'm worried about for season 2, because there's so many cameos that have been kind of announced
Rumored, yeah.
that I'm kind of worried about that, but
I'll be okay if they keep them to 1 or 2 episodes, which that's kind of my prediction. I think that they're going to try to keep all of these cameos to like one sort of like crossover episode, where like maybe they'll run into some of the characters, and then because there's all those rumors of a Rebels sequel, which realistically could be taking place in the exact same timeline. So yeah, that's kind of been my thoughts on that.
Yeah. We also got an email from Callum, just laying out some of his thoughts on ISARD'S Revenge. So there are a few of these things we actually talked about already, but thank you for your thoughts on that, Callum. Yeah, he was talking about Asyr's plans being kind of...
She missed a huge opportunity.
But there's another question in chat right now from Lego Star Wars fan saying, or not,
he just
question,
emailed us as well,
saying in Dark Tide Admiral Trace Grafay basically tells Gavin that the reason he's not a jerk is because of the teacher at the Bothan Martial Academy. Is it possible that this could be Asyr? I think that's a fun bit of possible headcanon. But no, I don't know that it's too soon. It's like 14 years.
Yeah, I guess. But she would have had to go through the Martial Academy again unless she... Well, I guess maybe
that's
she
14
assumed
years.
an
That's enough,
identity
but...
with a... Yeah, it's possible. That's a nice bit of headcanon.
So I'd be willing to co-sign that.
Yeah.
But and was Dark Tide Michael Stackpole's books?
I think so.
Dark Tide it was either that or Lucino's. No, Lucino is Agents of Chaos. So I think Dark Tide is Michael Stackpole. I'm gonna tweet. So if it's Michael Stackpole's, then absolutely. Oh yeah, he did respond to a tweet thread that we were both in, so we have that in now. Because that's also a 2012 thriller adventure movie. Yeah, it was him. I checked. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'd be willing to say that probably was intended to be Asyr. Yeah. But yeah. So
should we do a ranking, I guess?
Let's show our rankings as they are right now and maybe just talk about what we're going to be doing with that. Right. I'm cool with that. Because there was a suggestion a few weeks ago in an email and I can't find it right now, but I think it was Torin. Yes, I think it was Torin that emailed us with a suggestion that instead of doing the direct rankings, because this is going to get cumbersome and already kind of is, that we should do a kind of tier list for it. So I think that's what we're actually going to do.
Ooh, I like that, yeah.
So we are actually going to be, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be moving, so I won't have time to do much prep for one of the podcast episodes. So rather than skip that episode, what we are planning to do is have it so that week we are actually just going to kind of re-review our book rankings and turn them into a tier list. So it'll be kind of a fluffier, just lower prep episode, but we'll go back through, we'll sort these into tiers, and then that'll kind of be what we go with in the future. So we'll keep you guys posted on when that's going to be.
Works for me.
But yeah.
So also, yeah, so next week we're doing Clone Wars Volume 2, and then after that we said Alphabet Squadron, right?
Yes, I think that is our plan. We're going to be doing it because I guess that kind of fits in with having just done an X-Wing book, do Alphabet Squadron, which is kind of in the same vein for that. Mm-hmm. And that'll be our first canon book, actually. Which, when's the pushed up release date for Thrawn? Or for Chaos Rising?
Let's see.
Because didn't it get moved from October to September, or was it moved up to October?
It wasn't even moved to... expected on September 1st. So, yeah.
Coming maybe soon. So we might end up doing that, maybe, for as soon as we can after it releases.
Yeah, well, September 1st is September 1st is a Saturday.
Yeah, and I might be moving the next 7 week, so we'll see. Yeah. We'll figure it out. But
that's still a couple months away anyway.
That's 1 month away.
What month is it right now?
It is... Let's not talk about that. Why did I just conflate August and September? Anyways, never mind.
Anyway, yeah. Where are you gonna rank this one, my friend?
It's kind of tough for me to put it above other X-Wing books.
Yeah,
because a lot of what I enjoyed about it was kind of stuff that was just very like already present in some of those books.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as I did enjoy it, it's hard for me to justify that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, other than Krytos Trap, I think I'm gonna put it just below Wedge's Gamble and above Jedi Search.
Okay.
So for me, that puts it in kind of the my bottom third. But there still hasn't been a book that I actively didn't enjoy, or actively dislike. So
I think everything right now would be at least like a C plus tier.
Yeah, except for Champions of the Force, which I probably, that's as close as I've been to like disliking a book so far, because I have felt it was just it didn't really do much.
Yeah, no, I feel you. For me, I think I will put it above Dark Apprentice and under Han Solo Adventures.
All right, so we have them actually in the similar place in our rankings, even though our lower ends do kind of diverge a little bit.
Yeah.
And
I do think, as Lego Star Wars fan says, we are rapidly approaching the Callista trilogy.
Oh god.
And I see Children of the Jedi right near the bottom.
Yeah. Like, I can tell you a lot of NJO is going to be at the top of my list, and I don't think it will be anywhere near that for you, so that'll probably be where things really...
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Crucible is going to be number one for me. Love you, Troy.
Dark Nest is going to be much higher. I think, like, after we get to NJO and beyond, that's where there's going to be a lot of more differences in opinion.
I don't know, because I really like Legacy of the Force, and you do too, don't you?
Yeah.
I really like Legacy of the Force. You see, I shit on Darkness a lot, but last time I haven't read it for ages. Last time I read it, I just listened to the audio versions. So the full non-truncated versions might be a little more enjoyable.
Yeah, like I mean, for me, it's just such a big part of Jason Solo's story, and that is my favorite character arc, because it kind of just shows this détente.
That is mostly left out of the audio version.
Yeah, like the kind of Force philosophy discussions that Luke has, the effect that Jason has on the Jedi Order with the stuff he learned from Vergier is, I think, interesting and important to kind of what happens to him after. Like I still think that Jason's story is basically how I would have expected to see Anakin's story be done, or what I think would have made a better story for Anakin, which is harder to do in 2 movies versus 19 books, or really 33 books. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these books are really heavily abridged, like they're 5 hours long. So I will say the abridgment for this book actually is really good. Even though it's only 3.5 hours long, it works really well for some reason. But like Lobaka's not even in the Darkness abridgment, and like that's obviously a pretty big part. And I don't think Jason is really in it either. He's in it at the very beginning. Doesn't he have like a doesn't he do some flow walking in that book? Like the very beginning.
There's not he doesn't play anywhere near as big a role as like Jaina, but it's just like the extent to which Luke kind of takes Jason's Force philosophy into the Jedi philosophy, and basically uses Force lightning, because it's not actually it's not the powers that's evil, it's how we use them or intend to use them. And that kind of, I thought that was just my favorite part of that series. But anyways, we've got Burial Cart in half an hour.
Yeah, guys, so we will be streaming some Burial Cart on X2, and we will be featuring Star Wars creator Bombastic. I'm not sure how much he's going to drink, because it is going to be noon Australian time, but it'll be fun.
Right, yeah. So that is youtube.com/ECKSTOO. There's more Star Wars and other game content goodness from both of us over there. But that's going to do it for us tonight. Anything else you wanted to say?
Nope. Good night, everybody.
It's fucking Force Lightning. It's not fuck that electric judgment bullshit.